Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're talking about something that affects far more people than most of us realize: trauma and how your mind learns to survive it. If you've experienced any kind of trauma, whether it's obvious trauma like abuse or violence, or subtle trauma like emotional neglect, chronic stress, or loss, your mind has developed specific survival mechanisms. These mechanisms were incredibly adaptive when you needed them. They helped you survive, but they might be limiting you now. I'm a psychologist who specializes in trauma, and I've worked with hundreds of people who didn't even realize they were living with trauma responses. They thought they were just broken or anxious or difficult, but what they actually had were 9 signs that their mind learned to survive. Today, I'm going to walk you through all 9 of these signs. As I describe them, pay attention to which ones resonate with you. This isn't about diagnosis. This is about awareness, because you can't change what you don't see. The first sign is hypervigilance. Hypervigilance means your nervous system is on high alert at all times. You're constantly scanning your environment for threats. You notice small changes: a shift in someone's tone, a change in their facial expression, a shift in the room's energy. You're reading people constantly. You're prepared to react at a moment's notice. This makes sense if you grew up in an unstable environment. If your parent was unpredictably angry, if you never knew what mood they'd be in, if you had to read their emotional state to stay safe, your nervous system learned to be hypervigilant. It learned that survival depended on detecting danger early. Now, years later, even in safe environments, your nervous system is still in that scanning mode. You're still preparing for the worst. The psychological cost is that hypervigilance is exhausting. Your nervous system never gets to relax. You experience higher baseline anxiety. You're more reactive. You jump at sudden noises. You startle easily. You have difficulty being truly present because part of your attention is always monitoring for threats. The second sign is emotional numbness or dissociation. Some people who experience trauma don't become hypervigilant. Instead, their mind does the opposite. It disconnects. It numbs. This is called dissociation or emotional numbing, and it's a powerful survival mechanism. If you experienced overwhelming pain, physical or emotional, your mind learned to disconnect from that pain. It essentially said, if I can't feel this, it won't hurt so much. If you experienced repeated trauma, your mind learned that feeling your emotions made you vulnerable, so it shut them down. Now, as an adult, you might find that you can't feel much of anything. You watch sad movies and feel nothing. You hear tragic news and feel disconnected. People tell you they love you and you feel empty inside. You're functioning, but there's a kind of numbness to your experience. This was protective when you needed it, but now it might be preventing you from experiencing joy, connection, and intimacy. You might seem cold to others. You might struggle in relationships because you can't access your emotions. People feel like you don't care, when actually you're just disconnected from your capacity to feel. The third sign is perfectionism and people-pleasing. If you grew up in an environment where your safety or acceptance depended on being perfect, on getting good grades, on being well-behaved, on not causing problems, you learned that your worth was conditional. You learned that mistakes were dangerous. You learned that you had to earn love through achievement and compliance. Now, as an adult, you're a perfectionist. You hold yourself to impossible standards. You can't just do things, you have to do them perfectly. You're constantly anxious that you're not good enough. You're a people pleaser because you learned that keeping others happy was essential for safety. You struggle to say no. You take on too much. You prioritize others' needs over your own. You apologize constantly, even for things that aren't your fault. This looks like success sometimes. Perfectionists often achieve a lot. People pleasers are often well liked. But internally, you're exhausted. You're anxious. You're resentful because you're constantly giving and sacrificing. You have difficulty knowing what you actually want because you've spent so long focused on what others need. The fourth sign is difficulty trusting. If you experience betrayal, particularly by someone who was supposed to protect you, your mind learned that trust is dangerous. If a parent hurt you, if a partner was unfaithful, if someone you relied on abandoned you, Your nervous system learned that people cannot be trusted. Now you have difficulty opening up to people. You test relationships. You look for signs of betrayal. You have a hard time believing people's good intentions. You might push people away before they can hurt you. You might stay in situations where you don't trust people because leaving requires trusting that something better exists, and you don't believe that. This is one of the most painful trauma responses because humans are social creatures. We need connection. But when your mind learned that connection is dangerous, you isolate. You have shallow relationships. You feel lonely even when surrounded by people. You might sabotage good relationships because deep down you expect them to fail. The fifth sign is automatic survival responses. If you experience trauma, your body learns certain automatic responses. These might be fight, flight, or freeze responses. Fight means you become aggressive or argumentative quickly. You have a short fuse. Flight means you run away from conflict or difficult emotions. You avoid, you escape. Freeze means you shut down when stressed. You can't think. You can't speak. You just go numb. These responses happen automatically. They're not conscious choices. You're in a mildly stressful situation and suddenly you're in fight mode, or you've fled the situation, or you're frozen and can't respond. Your nervous system is reacting based on trauma patterns, not based on what the current situation actually requires. The sixth sign is memory gaps and fragmentation. When trauma is severe, particularly if it happened when you were young, your mind might protect you by fragmenting the memory or creating gaps. You might have whole periods of your childhood you don't remember. You might remember events but feel emotionally disconnected from them. You might have memories that feel like they're from someone else's life. This dissociation of memories is protective in the moment, but it can create confusion and difficulty understanding yourself. You might not understand why you have certain fears or triggers. You might feel like your history doesn't quite make sense because parts of it are missing or fragmented. The seventh sign is shame and self-blame. This is particularly common in people who experienced abuse. Your mind, trying to make sense of what happened, concludes that it must have been your fault. If it was your fault, then you had control. And if you had control, maybe you can prevent it from happening again. This is actually a logical response to an illogical situation, but the result is shame. You carry a sense of shame about what happened. Even though logically you know it wasn't your fault, emotionally you believe it was. You feel defective. You feel like something is wrong with you. You might hide parts of yourself. You might feel unworthy of love. You might engage in self-harm or self-sabotage because you believe you deserve it. The eighth sign is difficulty with boundaries. If you grew up in an environment where your boundaries weren't respected, where your body or your emotions or your possessions weren't safe, you either learned no boundaries at all, or you learned walls instead of boundaries. No boundaries means you let people use you. You can't say no. You merge with other people's emotions and needs. You lose yourself in relationships. Walls means you keep everyone at a distance. You don't let anyone close. You're defended and isolated. Healthy boundaries are different from walls. Healthy boundaries are permeable. They let good things in and keep harmful things out. But if you experienced boundary violations, learning healthy boundaries can be really difficult. The ninth and final sign is compulsive coping mechanisms. Your mind learned to survive through various coping strategies. Some of these might be adaptive, like journaling, exercise, or talking to friends. But some might be maladaptive, like substance use, binge eating, compulsive behaviors, or other ways of numbing or dissociating. You might not even realize you're using these as coping mechanisms. You might think you just like drinking, or you just can't control your eating, or you're just naturally compulsive. But if you look closely, you might notice that you turn to these behaviors when you're stressed or when difficult emotions surface. They're your mind's way of managing overwhelming internal experiences. Now here's what's really important to understand about all of these signs. They are not character flaws. They are not weaknesses. They are survival mechanisms. Your mind and body did exactly what they needed to do to keep you alive and functioning through trauma. These adaptations were brilliant. They allowed you to survive. The problem is that what helped you survive in a traumatic environment might not serve you in a safe environment. And here's the key insight. Your nervous system doesn't automatically know that you're safe now. It's still operating as if you're in danger because it learned those patterns when you were in danger. And without intervention, those patterns can persist for years, even decades. So what do you do with this information? First, recognize that if you see yourself in these 9 signs, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means you survived. Your mind and body did their job. They got you through. That's actually evidence of strength, not weakness. Second, understand that these patterns can change. Trauma responses are learned, and what's learned can be unlearned. Your nervous system can be retrained. You can learn to feel safe when you actually are safe. You can learn to trust when you're with trustworthy people. You can learn healthy boundaries. You can learn to process emotions instead of numbing them. This retraining doesn't happen overnight. Trauma is stored in your body and your nervous system, not just in your mind. So healing involves working with your body as well as your mind. Therapies like EMDR, somatic experiencing, and trauma-informed CBT are specifically designed to help your nervous system recognize that you're safe now and to process the trauma that's stored in your body. If you see yourself in several of these 9 signs, I would really encourage you to work with a trauma-informed therapist. Trauma is not something you have to figure out alone. Professional support can make an enormous difference. But even without professional support, you can start to become aware of your patterns. You can start to notice when you're in a hypervigilant state and consciously try to calm your nervous system. You can start to notice when you're people-pleasing and practice saying no. You can start to notice your automatic survival responses and pause before reacting. You can start to practice self-compassion instead of shame. One more important thing, healing from trauma is not about forgetting what happened or moving on quickly. Healing is about integrating what happened. It's about understanding how it shaped you while not letting it define you. It's about reclaiming parts of yourself that got hurt or shut down. It's about building a life where you feel safe and connected, even though part of you will always carry the memory of what happened. The hidden power of trauma is that the same mechanisms that helped you survive can be transformed. Your hypervigilance can become intuition. Your independence can become healthy autonomy. Your resilience can become genuine strength. Your sensitivity can become empathy. The question is not how do I erase my trauma, but how do I integrate it and use it to create a meaningful life? If you recognize yourself in these 9 signs, know that you're not alone. Millions of people are walking around with trauma responses that they don't fully understand. And the fact that you're watching this video, that you're becoming aware of these patterns, is already the first step toward healing. Thank you for watching. If any of these 9 signs resonated with you, please leave a comment. What sign did you recognize most strongly in yourself? And if you've worked through trauma, I'd love to hear about your healing journey. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.